Hello, MCU fans! Today's going to be my breakdown review of Spider-Man 94, issue number 2. Of course, this 5-issue limited series follows up on the cliffhanger ending of Spider-Man the Animated Series. So there will be spoilers for the comic, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have an October contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out. Plus, hang around to the end of the video, and we'll talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch on the Discord. Alright, so first let's talk about the alternate covers for issue number 2. Of course, on the left is the official cover, but we actually have several alternate covers. There's this one with the Shocker, which I don't quite understand because he's not in the issue. And then there's this one where Spider-Man turns into an actual spider, also doesn't happen in the issue. But I do like this alternate cover. It's basically like an action figure that we would have gotten back in the 90s. In fact, for issue number 1, there was an alternate cover of a Spider-Man action figure. So that's pretty cool. Now, there's actually one more alternate cover, but I can't show it because it's a spoiler for this character from issue number 1. Remember the mystery character that was basically stalking and following Kaine? Well, the alternate cover literally tells you who that is. So I'll reveal that at the end once we learn the identity of that stalker. All right, so the issue itself starts with a tribute to the late, great Jim Shooter. In fact, we've been losing a lot of Marvel giants. Remember Peter David? They actually had his tribute in the last issue. But Jim Shooter is so important. We would not have gotten the original Secret Wars comic if not for him. So R.I.P. Jim, R.I.P. So then we get a quick synopsis of the last issue. They tell us that Morlun, a figure shrouded in mystery, has sent his underling Kaine to bring him Spider-Man. After fending off Kaine, Peter Parker returns to his Aunt May's house to make sure his family is safe, and Kaine finds himself in a much worse fate as Morlun absorbs his life force, leaving him a drained husk. And that's actually where the issue picks up, with Kaine being reborn, once again, cloned for like the 100th time or so, as we're going to learn. In fact, now Morlun is saying, "Welcome back, my son, myself." So that's where we get our title, Rebirth, Re-Death, because as Morlun explains, there's no need to struggle, Kaine, no need for fear. We've been through this process hundreds of times, down through these long years. Cloned from my own cells, you have been born. You have lived, and you have died again and again and again. That is crazy. I wonder how long this has actually been going on. And with each rebirth, I pray the flaws in your design will be corrected. I pray you will know a full life as my loyal servant. And in fact, we can see those flaws that Morlun mentioned there on Kaine's face. Ugh, that looks so nasty. And Morlun says, "But for now, Kaine, sleep, then awake, and live to serve me once again. And when your degeneration," as he's referring to that nastiness on his face, "when your degeneration reaches its inevitable peak, I will feast on your energy and death, and you will grant me continued life." All right, so Morlun leaves, but when Kaine finally wakes up and puts on his suit there, he says, "There's a name hovering on the edge of my mind. Kaine. Is that who I am? Yes, Kaine, servant of Morlun for so many years." But then we're going to see that Kaine is struggling with his relationship with Morlun. He says, "Why is it so hard to remember those years? A blur of images and emotions. But I remember you, Father. I live for you. I would gladly die for you. But why then do I hate you?" So yeah, definitely a love-hate relationship with Morlun. But then he stops to think about his connection with Spider-Man. He says, "I remember the spider. It was my job to bring him to Father. My job, and I failed. And then what? Something happened. Something that's happened before. But it doesn't matter. All that matters is serving my Father's will. All that matters is Morlun." So, remember what he's talking about? In the last issue, when Spider-Man was fighting him, he said, "Your emotions, they're like psychic knives." And then later he says, "I feel as if my consciousness has been turned inside out. What did the spider do to me? How did he do it?" So, yeah, we obviously have a mystery here with the connection between Spider-Man and Kaine, and I'm sure we'll continue to unpack that in future issues. But now it's time to turn to Mary Jane, who decides to go and make up with Aunt Anna. Aunt Anna. My nemesis. Anyway, Mary Jane says, "I've been knocking at the door for 5 minutes, Aunt Anna. I know you're home, so how about opening the door and she says, "If you're here to insult me again, you can just turn around," and she's like, "Please, can I just come in to apologize?" I guess. I guess she should apologize. Remember, she told Aunt Anna to shut up, which was so awesome, right? But Aunt Anna should apologize for 5 seasons of being a horrible person. Anyway, I appreciate Mary Jane being the better person and apologizing. But I got to give Anna credit for this. She then says, I'm sorry too, sweetheart. I hate it when we argue. Aw. So then Mary Jane explains that she needs to head out for a job interview, but as she leaves, Anna says, is it possible you were upset by what I said about Peter last night because deep down, you think I'm right? So Mary Jane's kind of annoyed, but also really thinking about it. So we're going to pick up on that in just a second. But first, we have to check out Aunt May, who's watching old videos of Peter and Uncle Ben. So Ben says, indulge her, look at the camera, give her a big, sincere smile, no goofing around. So, of course, a young kid is going to do that, right? Oh, I still do that in pictures. So anyway, so she says, can't you two ever be serious? And Ben says, let me think about that. Oh, sorry, May, seriousness just isn't in our vocabulary. Right, Petey? So yeah, that's really cool. She's just sitting there watching these old videos, and turns out she's not alone. Mary Jane says, he was one cute kid, wasn't he? She says, I'm sorry, I didn't know him then. But then as the conversation moves on, May drops a bombshell. She says, what Anna said, it got to you, didn't it? And MJ says, well, you're pretty perceptive, May. And listen to this. So May says, well, she has every right to be concerned about Peter. The boy is a mass of contradictions. So conservative in some ways, I suppose he gets that from me, but in others, he can be incredibly reckless. He's open. He's loving. He cares so much, yet it seems as if he's harboring a secret. Isn't he, right? And MJ's like, well, our Peter is a complicated man, May. And May drops the bombshell. She says, yes, all the more complicated because he's Spider-Man. Whoa. I mean, I just had to stop and just take a moment to absorb that. Okay, so when did Aunt May figure out he's Spider-Man? Well, I will say, this answers one of the questions that I had last issue. Because remember, when they finally came back from, their adventure that they're not telling us about yet. Anyway, we learned that it had been months, right? For the first time in months, I can honestly say I'm happy, he says. They were gone for months, yet Aunt May didn't seem to care at all. Well, it's not that she didn't care, but she understood because she knew he was Spider-Man. And another big hint is when they accidentally said they're getting married, and Aunt May's like, getting married? And they're like, oh, I mean, we are married. But look at her face. That's not the look of somebody who was confused by what they said. That's a wry little smile because she knows better. She knows they slipped up, but she knows the full situation as well. So, oh my goodness, that is huge. So let me know your thoughts. When do you think she figured it out? How long has she known? Maybe it was sometime during the animated series itself? Wild stuff. Absolutely wild. All right, so now let's talk about the actual hero of the comic, okay? Spider-Man. And he's also struggling with what Anna said. Anna Watson may have been right when she told Peter Parker that he needed to end his association with Spider-Man, of course, last issue, even if she has no idea that Pete and Spidey are one and the same. After all the struggles, all the sacrifices Mary Jane and I made in order to get back home again, how can I risk her love? Of course, I have to grouse again, because notice he's saying, in order to get back home again? Well, they won't tell us about that yet, right? It's a tale we'll tell eventually. It better be in this 5-issue limited series or coming out really soon afterwards, because this is what we all wanted to know, right? Well, anyway, he says, how can I risk our love, our life together by webbing around the city and, whoa, hang on, Spidey sense is tingling like mad, which means... Wait a minute, is that a banana? Yeah, it's not just a banana, it's actually an exploding banana thrown by a mad scientist with a fruit fetish, wonders Spider-Man? Nope, it was not that. Instead, it's these 3 clowns, right? Banana bomb number 2 coming up. Oh man. Worse than that, he says, it's 3 of the most incompetent crooks I've ever faced. The grizzly, the kangaroo, and the gibbon. He's like, come on, guys, you just got out of jail. Do you really want to go back again? It is funny. It seems like every time these supervillains get out of jail, they're like, okay, time for our rematch. Dude, you're going to lose again. You're going to lose again. And I love the fact that these bystanders are just laughing at them. The one lady's like, banana bomb? These dudes are hilarious. Of course, ma'am, The banana bomb could still kill you, ridiculous as it is. But anyway, let's talk about these three villains. So the grizzly actually first appeared way back in Spider-Man 139, the kangaroo way back in Spider-Man 81, and the gibbon in Spider-Man 110. Now, technically speaking, this is not the same kangaroo in the comic because he actually died, and kangaroo number 2 first appeared in Luke Cage number 13. But yeah, lots of ridiculous villains. Kind of fun to see them here in this limited series. All right, so turns out they aren't alone. They're saying together we're unstoppable and we're finally going to get the respect we deserve. Dude, wearing those costumes, you are not going to get any respect. But like I say, they're not alone because also comes hopping in one more supervillain. It's the lethal leapfrog. And Spider-Man's like, didn't Daredevil kick your toadish tush a few months back? Of course, yeah, he's normally a Daredevil villain. And he says, maybe, but I've joined forces with my buddies. So, all right, let's talk about Leapfrog. So he first appeared way back in Daredevil number 25. And then actually, Frogman first appeared in Marvel Team Up number 121. Totally different people, but I wanted to bring that up to make sure there was no confusion. And then Leapfrog also appeared in the She-Hulk series. Just as silly and ridiculous. So, craziness, right? Well, anyway, Morlun now joins the fray, and he is brutal. So they say, who the heck are you? And he says, you're ending. And he means it. So he grabs Kangaroo by the tail, talking about the ease with which he can be dispatched, and just slams him up against the wall. So he's down for the count. Then the gibbon jumps in, says, well, how's this for a surprise, buddy? I'm going to break you in half. Oh, no, you're not. Because Morlun says, you will do, and slams him down, nothing. And then stomps on his arm, presumably breaking it, right? Because look at that crunch. Oh, what a nasty sound effect, right? Or technically, runch. But you get the idea. That arm is done, and so is the gibbon. So Spider-Man's like, hey, take it easy. I've got this. There's no need to... Well, Morlun smacks him out of the way, and he ends up landing right in front of a bus. He says, wow, that punch could have given the Hulk a migraine. So obviously Morlun is very strong, but unfortunately he can't get up in time, and it's actually Leapfrog that jumps in to rescue him. Spider-Man's like, wait, weren't you and your friends trying to pound me into hamburger? And he's like, a friendly little fracas is one thing, but standing around while you get flattened by a truck, I'd never forgive myself. So yeah, they basically wanted to fight and win in a battle with Spider-Man, but they didn't want him dead. But on the other hand, Morlun has different things in mind. He continues his violent assault. Now the Grizzly's trying his best. He says, you're going to pay for what you did to him, and actually gets in a nice strike on him. That's interesting. So he does bleed, it looks like. But anyway, he says, I hope you enjoyed that because it's the last moment of pleasure you'll know in this life. Oh my. So he picks him up, breaks his back with a nasty crack sound effect, right? And then Spider-Man says, but wait, what's he doing now? And Morlun says, you'll make a fine meal, my friend. And he starts draining the life force out of Grizzly, killing him. Oh my word. So Spider-Man jumps in and says, I'll keep this lunatic busy while you three get Grizzly, remember with the broken back, to a hospital. So sure enough, they do cart Grizzly off. But wait, if he's got a broken back, is that the best idea just to pick him up like that? I don't know. That might not be the smartest move. But nonetheless, Morlun orders Spider-Man to surrender. He says, surrender now. Of course, he's like, well, why would I do that? And Morlun very menacingly says, because the alternative is terrible indeed. Well, obviously, Spider-Man doesn't surrender, and Morlun gives him a beatdown. He's so powerful, so fast, says Spider-Man. He throws him then through this glass window, basically demolishing him, right? So then Morlun says, there is no need for this. I ask you again to surrender. Well, there's no way he's going to do that, right? Never, he says. Swings a punch at Morlun, and Morlun says, I would expect no less from the spider as he breaks his hand with another nasty crack sound effect. My word, this dude is the worst. I cannot wait for someone to kick Morlun's butt. Anyway, he then delivers the final blow. Man, that has to hurt. And then says, I'm truly sorry, Spider, but you see, my needs far outweigh yours. So yeah, with a now completely unconscious Spider-Man, he just climbs up a wall and takes him away. All right, so now finally the stalker's revealed. Remember, this guy from issue number 1, he's now, once again, standing on a rooftop, watching and says, so arrogant, Morlun. So secure in your power, so utterly delusional. Cling to those delusions while you can, monster, for they'll soon be shattered into a million jagged shards. And the final sight you'll see before death devours you will be the face. And this is your last chance to guess who this was. I didn't get it right, I'll tell you that much. In fact, speaking of getting it right, the only comment that got it right was Project Rebel, who said, I think the person watching Kaine might be Craven. Yep, sure enough, it is Craven the Hunter. So now I can officially show the other alternate cover, which, like I say, was a total spoiler. Anybody that bought this issue, this version of it, is like, hey, you're telling me the answer to the big mystery. But also, it looks like issue number 4 will be the one that features Craven. So he probably won't be in issue number 3, but by issue number 4, he's going to be coming to town. Issue number 3, however, our next issue is called Morlun's Tale. So that's probably where we're going to learn Morlun's origin and how he's tied to Spider-Man. All right, so I have to briefly mention the timeline. Remember, we're tracking Spider-Man 94, issues 1 through 5, down in the lower right-hand corner. And as of now, they're in June of 1997. Well, issue number 2 pretty much spanned like one day. So we're definitely still in June, which is well before Spider-Man's appearance in X-Men 97 in November of 1997. Because, of course, remember, Flash, Peter, and MJ appeared there. So, yeah, timeline's working out really well. And so now we wait for issue number 3 to arrive on November 12th. So let me know your thoughts. Did you like this issue? Do you like the series so far? Where do you think it's headed? You know I love to read and respond to everything. And don't forget about that October contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are in the MCU official tie-in comic section, where Hunter does a great job of breaking the comics down. And notice we're talking about the blank variant cover for issue number 1, which seems to be for fan convention purposes, where you can get it signed. That's kind of cool, right? Plus, I promised I would talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch. Every day listed here at 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll watch a different movie or show as we head towards the December 18, 2026 release of Doomsday. So we have 2,400 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.